At 10 years old, I came up with my first hypothesis with my dad. And I said, Dad, do you think it's possible that what we're eating is causing us to be so sick? And he has his doctorate from Columbia University. And he said, what would make you think that? And I said, our animals don't eat what we're eating, and they're never sick. I said, Grandma says that the tribes are never sick. I said, why are you and I always sick? And I said, the only thing that's different is everything we eat has a label, and I have no idea what it says. You do know that meat causes cancer. I said, well, let's see. I said, because I'm a guinea pig. They go in there, he comes back out. I said, how was it? And he goes, it's the most beautiful colon I've ever seen. It doesn't make sense. He says, you're at 60. He says, you should have at least some polyps. Everyone, there's always something. He goes, it's so beautiful. And of course, all the nurses are coming in. What are you eating? What are you eating? And I said, meat. And they're like, you mean we can go home and tell our husbands they can start eating meat now? I said, eat away, you know?
Welcome back to the Rooted in Resilience podcast. Today, we have the pleasure of chatting with our friend, Suze, who visited a number of Indigenous tribes in last year and in the beginning of this year. And so we are going to have a two-part podcast discussing her trips to visit the Indigenous tribes and what she learned. So in today's podcast, we're going to talk about her visit to the
Pacific Islands.
Yes, there we go.
And the various tribes she encountered there. So she went to 6 or 7 different islands and got to learn by living with, like, actually experiencing their lifestyles. So it wasn't kind of just research studies. She actually was boots on the ground, experiencing what they do every single day and how they eat, how they live, their heritage, all these different amazing things that we've lost a lot in the US. And we could really serve to learn a lot from these people who are cherishing and preserving their traditions, and some that aren't.
Yeah. So,
and the differences between those that are and aren't is actually really astounding.
So why is it important to learn from these Indigenous tribes? Well, chronic disease didn't exist back in the day, and it's just ancestral wisdom that we're losing as we go from one generation to the next. And so gaining some fun insights, and it's not just food, but also culture and environmental conditions and toxins.
Yeah, and I hope that in these episodes that we do with Suze, and I know that her mission circles around this, is to preserve this heritage and these traditions of these tribes so they're not lost to the future generations. And I think that it's actually going to take a lot more of us, people, all of us, helping to further this mission, because it sounds like from Suze, what we're going to learn soon is that they are pretty quickly going literally quite extinct. So you're definitely going to want to listen through this podcast podcast. It might seem very educational, or there's a PowerPoint involved, but it's fascinating information. And I highly encourage you get to the end, because I learned a lot personally.
So today is episode 1, and we will do the Pacific Islanders. And then in the next episode with Suze, we will talk about her trips to visit tribes in Africa, such as the Maasai. So,
not to mention, Suze has had her own really astounding health journey, and she's overcome a lot, and she's still learning and evolving. And I think that's what life is all about, is the continuous journey. And it's not so much a destination, but, you know, how we're living along the way. So you guys are going to love Suze as much as we've become to love her. She's a very good friend, and we're very fortunate that she gave us this time.
Well, before we get started, her dietary trip, started with raw vegan, trying to find health, then went to carnivore. So 2 extremes, right? And then settled in the middle, like us, more omnivorous. And it's kind of funny when you take a step back and you see Americans searching out what the answer is for health, because America has become so lost with, like, food, heritage, and tradition. So it's really cool to gain these insights from others who visit tribes. So I hope you guys take some points and fun lessons. Yeah.
Welcome back to the Rooted in Resilience podcast. Today we are talking with our wonderful friend Suze, who is going to be sharing her experience visiting 2 different Indigenous tribes earlier this year. We are so excited. We will resume our Minnesota starvation experiment study discussion with Kathleen in our next episode. But today we're going to dive into a full day of eating for the Indigenous tribes, what Suzanne has learned. I can't wait to talk about what they eat and what their poop is like, what insights you gain from their poop.
Deep discussion, guys.
But first, Suze, who is Suzanne? Give us a little introduction.
Oh, Ash. Well, I'm quite a unique character, as my daughters always say. They call me the cartoon character. No, but I'm 62 years old, and I'm an educator and a health and nutrition researcher. And this has been my lifelong, I guess, goals. I've been doing this since I was 5, and it starts back to my grandma, who was living with tribes when I was a little girl. She was living with Africa tribes for 3 years. And when she would come home on visits to see us, I would just sit at her feet because I was so sickly. And she would just tell me all about the tribes. And I would always say, are they sick? Are they sick like I am? And she'd say, no, the children are so healthy. And she said, and I said, well, what, and at that point, my father was a wildlife rehabilitator. And so I was living with wild animals, and they were my family, basically. And I knew that they were eating from what their species specific diet, but we weren't. And every time I ate, I was sick, and didn't know I had celiac disease back then. It took me till I was about 57 to figure that one out. And my father was always sick, and so it was just a miserable childhood and most beginning of my adulthood. But anyway, so hearing my grandma talking about how healthy the tribes were and what they were eating, and she'd talk about the monkey brains and all the things, I would be, she would just say how beautiful they were. And she would show the pictures. She had slides, and we had slide presentation, and we watched them, and I was just in awe. And so I've been studying them ever since, and always knew I would eventually be going there to live with the tribes. And so that's what I've been doing for most of my life, is researching and trying to figure out what was wrong with all of us. And I knew it was our food. And at 10 years old, I came up with my first hypothesis with my dad. And I said, Dad, do you think it's possible that what we're eating is causing us to be so sick? And he has his doctorate from Columbia University. And he said, what would make you think that? And I said, our animals don't eat what we're eating, and they're never sick. I said, Grandma says that the tribes are never sick. I said, why are you and I always sick? And I said, the only thing that's different is everything we eat has a label, and I have no idea what it says. And he said, I never thought about that. And so that's whenever I would go to the doctors, they would always say, you're just going to be this way. Take this, take that. And I said, God doesn't make mistakes. And I said, well, I'm not going to take these things. I'm going to figure this out. And so when I graduated and went off to college to become an opera singer, that was my first degree.
Can we hear a sample? I'm just kidding.
That's why you'll hear me just burst into just funny. Yeah, I always burst into song. And of course, I'm at the University of Hartford in Connecticut at the Hart School of Music, and the library was massive because I was from a teeny tiny little town of like 600 people, and we didn't really have much of a library, but I was just library research everywhere, and I started researching then, and I started taking food out of my diet, and the first thing was dairy, because the dairy we had back in those days was of course processed. It was all the same thing we have now. It was pasteurized. But when I was growing up as a little girl, my father he had connections at a cheese factory, the Kraft cheese factory in a region where, and he would go to the back door and they would bring him 25-pound bags of cheese curd that were raw. It was raw. And only the people who worked there could get this raw. And he would bring it home, and we would just sit at the table and we'd just, stuff our faces. And it was probably one of the things that helped me to survive, because I'm one of the tallest ones of the girls. I'm 5'8" in our family. And I'm thinking that helped to have growth, because everything else was so processed. It was just tang our juice was tang. We never had fresh fruit. It was fruit cocktail with heavy syrup. It was just, Captain Crunch for breakfast. It was just horrible. And I just was so sickly all the time. But anyway, so then I started taking things out of my diet, and I started feeling so much better. I had a hiatal hernia very early in life, which is very rare. And the pain from the hiatal hernia was it was burning up my vocal cords. And it was just horrible. But anyway, fast forward. So finally, I became completely vegan. And I was vegan for probably close to 25 to 30 years. And then in my last 6 years, I was raw vegan. And that's when my health really started falling apart. And I couldn't feel my feet by the age of 50. And the neuropathy and so forth was getting really bad. And I kept thinking, what's going on? Of course, my doctor's, you're 50. This is what happens. You're just getting old. And I said, I kept saying the same thing. God doesn't make mistakes. There's something wrong here. So we had my first colonoscopy at 50. And I'm thinking it's going to be so beautiful because I'm eating the perfect diet. And when they came out and they looked, the doctors, I said, how was it? And he said, I can't tell you. And I said, why? And he said, because your entire colon is embedded with nuts and seeds.
Ah.
And he said, whoever told you that humans can digest nuts and seeds? And I said, but it's supposed to be a superfood, a power food. And at that point, I'm working on my doctorate in health and nutrition. I'm working on. I said, but it goes against everything. He goes, no. He goes, you especially can't. He goes, no more nuts and seeds for you.
Oh my goodness.
And so I thought, so that's why I'm really started. So I'm telling all my professors this. I'm saying, there's something not right here. And so that's why I started to really question whether this is really a pristine diet. I took the nuts and seeds out. And then as I kept moving forward, and then my blood work started coming back really bad. And finally at 57, my blood work looked like I had a terrible, I was going to be dying I had no white blood cells, no red blood cells, and platelets were totally depleted. They wanted to put me in the hospital. And the oncologist, she said, Suze, I think you have a rare lymphoma. And she says, we can't figure this out. And she says, we need to do a biopsy on your bone marrow. And she says, the pain is going to be horrendous. And she says, but I know you. And she says, are you going to get treatment? I said, are you kidding me? I said, I'm doing this on my own. And I said, I don't have cancer. I know I don't. She says, well, there's nothing else we can do for you then. So that's when I realized I also had implants, guys. Girls, anyone watching, please don't ever get breast implants. Don't let any man ever feel that you're ugly after nursing your children, because you're not. They're designed for that. They're not. Please. And so 10 years previously, I put implants in because my husband that had left us years before had told me I was so hideous looking after nursing my girls for 6 years that no man would ever want me.
Oh my gosh.
So I wasn't dating. I would gone for 20 years without dating anyone because I was so hideous. So I thought that would help me, but it didn't. As soon as they were put in, I said, I wanted them out because this was so fake. But anyway, so I researched it and found out that it's a possibility that the breast implants could be causing cancer. So I went and had them completely taken out. And a lot of symptoms went away after that was taken out because I was so allergic to the toxins of the implants themselves. But anyway, that's a whole other story. So anyway, fast forward, 60 years old, I have another colonoscopy. At this point, I'm carnivore. And of course, I'm following you guys like there's no tomorrow. So you guys and I were all on the same trajectory.
Yes.
We were believing so much, So I go in and thinking, I said to the doctor, I said, now, this time I'm not a vegan. I'm carnivore. I'm fully eating meat. You do know that meat causes cancer. I said, well, let's see. I said, because I'm a guinea pig. They go in there. He comes back out. I said, how was it? And he goes, it's the most beautiful colon I've ever seen. It doesn't make sense. He says, you're at 60. He says, you should have at least some polyps. Everyone, there's always something. He goes, it's so beautiful. And of course, all the nurses are coming in. What are you eating? What are you eating? And I said, meat. And they're like, you mean we can go home and tell our husbands they can start eating meat now? I said, eat away, But still at that point, I was still having such foot and leg cramps. They were so, no matter what, nothing was helping. Nothing was helping them until I did my research. And I thought, this is not normal. This is not ancestral. We need to have for me, I need to have plants. I need to have fruit. I need magnesium. I need potassium. I'm not taking supplements. This is not normal. And that's when I added back in bananas and avocados. And it was like profound. It was overnight. I was like, oh, finally, the cramping is gone. I felt so alive.
Oh.
Now fast forward. So now here we are. And so in October, Dr. Kenobi and I, we went on our first expedition to the Pacific Islands. And I don't know if you want to put that screen up, darling girls. I don't know.
Yes. First off, wow. Yeah, you have been through a journey, Suze. We just gotta, before we get to the PowerPoint, we just gotta reflect on a few things.
Opera singer first.
Opera singer.
I don't know that. That's crazy.
I'm what we call a coloratura. It's the really high voice that you can do all the runs and the trills and stuff.
Oh my gosh,
And
that's
I studied with Beverly Sills at the New York City Opera Company, was one of the most famous opera singers in the world.
Wow.
And she took me under her wing, and they used to call me Bubbles Junior because that was her thing. That was
That's
her
great.
nickname, and so I was known as Bubbles Junior. I was with that company and also with the Montreal Opera Company. But then I
Wow.
also modeled. I modeled, and I was also modeling. But I was also in pageants, which was a goofy thing. I was Miss New York State. I was in the Miss America pageant. So I was.
But Suze, those are experiences that impact you mentally
Mhm.
because you're told that you have to be really thin,
Yes,
and then
yes.
that leads to eating less and less.
Oh,
and that's
and
a
yeah,
big-
and that was it. You had to be thin, but I was always so thin. I was like the thinnest of all of that, and I had to eat constantly because I was starving all the time. And I've always been. When I was vegan, I was eating 3,000 calories a day, but it was just coming out my back end.
Yeah.
It was just
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just so much to the whole. But again, God had a plan. Everything was for a reason, and I had to meet the right people, and I was always meeting the right people and being put in the right places to learn and to teach others, and everything it's how I met you guys.
Yeah.
I reached out to you guys, years ago saying, help, I'm doing the same. We're in the same, we were both mostly vegan, and then we became carnivore and realized that wasn't working, and we were just the same. We're so the same,
Yeah.
and we have the
Yeah.
neuropathy going there.
Yeah.
We got so much going on,
And the more that we shared about all this, the more we realize that so many people go through such a similar path.
Yes.
And I mean, the relief that you find from one fix, unfortunately, when it's an extreme, often doesn't last because it's really, like you said, it's not normal. It's not what we're innately supposed to be eating, or it's just such an extreme path that inevitably some problem or imbalance is going to pop up. And so it seems like you continuously found relief, and then it would catch up to you, and then you found relief, and then it would catch up to you.
Yes.
Yeah. So I cannot wait to hear about what you've learned, what you found is your more balanced approach to your nutrition in your life and how you're doing now. And
Yeah.
we've already talked about this on the side, but Ashley and I eventually are going to go on one of these trips.
They're gonna go with me.
Yes. We literally can't wait because I really feel like we all live in our own little bubble. What we know is what we're exposed to. And so kind of just putting yourself in a literally completely different situation, I only imagine is life-changing. So I want to hear it from you.
You'll never be the same. And I hope that everyone can, by going through the PowerPoints and so forth, and that you will realize that it's really quite simple. Being a human, it shouldn't be a task. It should be intuitive. We should know.
It's beautiful.
Like our animals do. And like my animals, I grew up, my raccoons were my greatest teacher. To watch them, to going down to the streams and just grabbing a crayfish or a frog, and just ripping into it. And yet, then they could go and pick berries. And my skunks were the same way, and the deer, and all the animals, the fox, and everything. It was just, and then when you go and live with the tribes, and you see the wild animals that they've got, or they're just the regular animals that they've got, their cows, and their sheep, and their goats, and their dogs, and their chickens, they're eating. They're not giving them anything. They're eating from the land. There's no supplemental feed, and their animals were pristine.
Yeah.
And so we can talk about that too. But there's just so much to unravel.
All right, let's start with the PowerPoint.
So Sue's prepared this PowerPoint for us
so that we can all learn from her expedition about what it means to be human.
Yeah.
Like the Indigenous tribes. While I get this loaded, Suze, how would you define Indigenous tribe?
Indigenous. Now, I've been with not just two. We went to two different places, really more than two different places. So in the Pacific Islands, we were different countries. So there were 7 in all. And then in Africa, my base was in Tanzania. So there was numerous cultures and tribes in Pacific Islands, which you'll see. And then in Tanzania, I was with 7 different tribes. So there's a whole plethora of different things that you'll see. They're not all eating the same thing. And then then you come to, as a researcher, you come to conclusions as why was this group faltering in their health? Why was there weaknesses and there's something lacking? And then you compare and contrast
Yep.
And that's how we come up with our conclusions and our hypotheses and things. And so you'll see as we go along, you kind of start making them yourself. Like, look at them. Look how they look compared to these people. Look. And I'll tell you what I witnessed and what I saw in their health. And you just kind of the wheels start turning. So we all have the ability to make these conclusions and theories. And then you just come up with, this is what makes sense. This is the only thing it could be.
Yeah.
You know, and it's really powerful. It's very powerful. So this is the beginning. This is where we first started. All right. So here we are. So this is the Pacific Islands. This is the region that we were at. Okay.
So here's the U.S. here.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. So we're now go to the next screen. Thank you, darlings. Okay. All right. So if you look up to where Syracuse is in the United States, that's where I came from. And so then I went. So that I had to go from Syracuse, and then I went down to where is that? I can't see it, so small.
Austin.
Yep. And then we then to LAX. And now Chris was already over in Australia. He was doing the low carb down under presentation. So that's why we decided to go now, because I'm such a budget person that this would be the cheapest way, because he was already there, and and the foundation wouldn't have to cover any of those expenses because something else was covered by the people that were paying for him to get there. So then I flew all the way over to Australia, Melbourne, and met him there. And then from Melbourne, then we went to Bati. And then from Bati, we went to, I can't even think of that one, Makassara. Okay. And then this is all flighting. This is just to get to the islands. It takes you forever to get there. And so I had to figure all these little places to get to the islands. Then we went to Jayapura. That was the first stop. And this is all in Indonesia. So West Papua. So Jayapura, they consider a city. When they say a city, guys, they are not cities. They're just very, but they actually have people with cars. That's why I think they call them cities. People actually have cars, you know, and they do have some stores. So these are the kind of, you'll see this is the people that we'll kind of be interacting with in this first expedition. So these are the different tribal people, and we became very close with them.
Oh.
Next screen. Okay, so again, this is just showing you the trajectory of where our planes went. So this picture this is actually their mall. And I was like, wow, that's pretty swell looking. It's pretty fancy. So I went into this mall with Chris, and down in the basement, they had a big store. It's kind of like what we would think of kind of like maybe like a Walmart, where it's got a little bit of everything. So you can get groceries, but you can get clothing and so forth. So we went into that. This was so funny because they had their wall of oils, and they even said on this one, it said this was their best selling.
Oh no.
Item. And it was palm oil. Well, I was glad to see it was palm oil, because that's what, 10% LA?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not bad. But Chris kept saying it's not bad. I said, no. I said, I wouldn't put that in my body. And he's like, yeah, but it's 10%. I said, it's 10%. I said, it adds up. If that's in all of the processed food, it's going to add up. And then the more he started seeing it, he started realizing, don't even say that this is even okay. Because we started seeing that the people, this is what they were mostly consuming.
So just to give some background, so in the United States, a lot of our vegetable oils, seed oils are made from corn oil and soybean oil and canola oil, but over there they don't have access to that. So their oils are made from palm oil, which palm oil has more saturated fat and less omega-6 linoleic acid, significantly less. But like you said, there is still some.
Yes, and the thing is, they did have all the other oils there. This is the great thing to think about. They had all the oils there. This just happened to be the one that they prefer.
Oh, okay.
And so you'll see as I go along, there's kind of a common theme here. A lot of the different areas, the different countries we've gone to, they have different choices. And this area happened to choose palm oil. Now, palm, they produce it there in Indonesia. It's a big thing. So of course it would be their chosen, because this is what they produce there. But interestingly, and I've been looking at this in every place I go, their Pringles has palm oil as oil of choice. Whatever place we have gone to, whatever is their oil of choice is the oil that Pringles uses.
Wow, Pringles.
Isn't it interesting?
Yeah.
So therefore, a lot of their processed food takes on whatever they prefer. So the companies can make, so it was very interesting. I thought that was kind of a neat thing to start to find out.
So in the U.S., is this the U.S. then, or is this another
one?
This
is the U.S. So then I went and looked at ours. Okay, so that's
oil.
vegetable oil. So it's soybean,
corn,
cottonseed, yep, sunflower, It's got really, these are high, guys. These are very, very high. Sunflower, I think, is 68%, I believe. So it's
60%, something like that.
Yeah. And that's
Sunflower is one of the worst.
Yeah, safflower is the worst. Safflower is the
Safflower.
worst of all of them. Yeah. But sunflower is right up there.
Yeah.
And so that was, I thought, isn't it interesting? So
Yeah.
Okay. So again, in Jayapura, we found that the most prevalent seed oil was palm oil, and it wasn't too bad compared to all the rest. This was one of the best ones that we found. All right. So then now we're going to fly to Wamena. Now Wamena, so Jayapura was just a stayover. We had to take a little teeny tiny plane to get us to where we're going to go. So now we have to fly up into the mountains. This is the highlands, and this is where the Dani tribe lives. And so they're very remote, and that's where I wanted to go to. A lot of the people who are saying that they're going and living with tribes, they're going to, certain areas where that you're going to find tribes, but they're more tourist attractions. They're not truly living ancestrally, so they kind of are putting on a show for you. And you want to truly go where the ancestral people are living, and you have to find them. And you've got to travel very deep into the woods and into the jungles to find them. So that's what we did. And so here we flew in, and this is Rami. I don't know if you can see the little square there of the person up there. That's Rami. He was our tour guide, and he was also our translator. We always have to have a translator.
Awesome.
They all speak different languages. So he took us in, and you can see my videos, guys. If you go on to my social media, you'll see all the videos. I share everything with everybody.
Oh yeah, we'll link that in the description.
And you'll see us traveling where like the roads are just awful, just like they are in Tanzania. The roads are just, if you even call them roads, And so we got up there. You go to the next screen, darlings. This is our first tribe. So this is a larger tribe of the Dani tribe. There's two tribes we spent time with, and they're both the Dani, but this is a larger tribe. And yes, I blocked them out because they don't wear a lot of clothing.
Lots of naked people.
Oh really?
Yes, very, very. The women will wear like a grass skirt, and the men will wear what's called a kotika, and it's all they wear. It's like a gourd that it's interesting shape and two little strings, and they put it over their their private area.
Interesting shape. Wait, so their tatas are just out? Tatas.
It's
There's some tatas.
A little gourd is covering that. And that's all it is.
Okay.
And it's got a little string that kind of holds it.
But for the women, so she said tatas, and by tatas she means boobies. So what their boobies were showing?
Oh, they're just wide open. Yeah.
And it's just so
so
such a contrast.
At first I was kind of like, but then the more you're with them, you don't even think about it anymore. You just don't. You don't even think about it. It was just, and it's the same thing with the men with just the gourd on. It was at first I was like, oh, okay, but now you just love them so much,
Yeah.
So a quick question: was that consistent with all the tribes?
No, this is just the Dani tribe. Now there are some tribes that I've mentioned to Chris before that we should go to, but you have to. They're totally they're basically like this. But when you go to stay with them, you have to dress like them.
Wow. Oh.
And so he was kind of like, I don't know if that's something he would really want to do. I'd be okay with it. I'm fine with it because I'm so ancestral. I've got nothing to hide.
Oh my goodness!
Wow. Wild.
Okay, wait. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if we were to apply the same concept to just all of America? Like, it would just be such a just extreme difference in what you would see, because I'm sure that there was at least some amount of cohesive or just like regular shape taking place, whereas in America we have literally every single extreme you could possibly find.
Yeah.
Does that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I think the most beautiful thing for me is that there's no sexual connotation in anything.
That's great. Yeah.
There's you have and I found this across the board. I mean, even though in Africa you're told they're the tribes I live with, they're clothed. But there was no, and this is the most, so powerful. I think it's part of also healing, and it's also part of being healthy. There was no cruelty. There was no pettiness. There was no prejudice. There was no anger. There was just, it was so beautiful. They were so at peace.
Yeah.
There was
That's
just no
really
jealousy. There was no
interesting.
competition. They lived for the moment because it's all about living. Because they don't know if a wild animal is going to come in and try to kill them. If they're going to get bit by something that's going to kill them. They don't know whether, many of them, the pastoralists know where their food is coming from. But the tribes like the Dani tribe and the Hadzabe, who are hunters, they don't know that. I mean, even though that this tribe, the Dani tribe, live 90% of their diet is sweet potato. 90%.
I can't wait
let's
to.
get into that.
All right, okay.
Oh, wait. Whatever's next on your slideshow. But it is really interesting that there's just, you can have a completely different attitude about something like a woman's breast based
Yes.
on, how you were raised and what you were exposed to. And like you said, it's not sexualized there. It's just a part of their.
This is our food. This is where
Yeah.
food comes from. It's a nutrient.
Exactly.
And they're not perky, they're hanging, they're not having implants to be looking as voluptuous and stuff. This is nature. This is how we are designed to be. And our breasts are designed for nurturing and for food. It's not, we've got to take the sexual, and I'm trying so hard to talk about this. We've got to stop.
Yeah.
And this is the whole thing that men in our media is making it so that men are thinking that that's all we're supposed to be.
Yeah. I mean, you've been personally touched by this.
The size of a woman's heart that matters, not the size of their boobs. People, we've got to stop.
Gosh,
I feel so good I could talk with you guys about anything.
yeah. Oh, we no filters here. But wow, does your life come full circle?
Yeah,
having that realization
Yeah.
and experience.
Yeah.
And it's
I
just
bet that was like a closure on the chapter of your life of
Oh,
your breast
and
augmentation.
and to be around men that don't care how I looked. I mean,
Yeah.
they thought it was odd how I looked because they're not used to being around someone.
Why so much clothes?
Just the color of my skin. They were touching my skin. It's soft, and your eyes, they're green, because their eyes are all dark brown or black. My hair was a whole different thing. They were just, because their hair is just, the tribes in Africa, they shave their heads. But here, their hair was it's very coarse,
Yeah.
And so they were were you born? Was it born? You born with all that hair? I said, oh no, you have to grow. And they couldn't understand it. But there was so much to learn. And of course, we can talk about sun. Guys, it's just, you have no idea. And the things that are being told by the gurus and social media, it's got to stop.
Yeah.
Because when we're saying get out in the sun and be out in the sun, well, if you go to the Africa sun, people, let me tell you, those of us who have our color skin and light eyes and our hair, you will fry.
Yeah.
And I don't wear sunscreen. I don't. And we'll talk about that. You'll see what happened to me when I got there. I show it all. So let's go
Okay.
move forward.
Okay.
So this is how they live. The men live in their huts and the women live in theirs. This is how it is with all the tribes.
What are the huts made out of?
These guys, they're sticks and grass. So sticks and grass. They don't use cow dung like they do in Africa because that's not their thing. So it's just sticks, and they might use some mud, and then the grass on the top. And again, the women will live in their huts and with the children, and the men will live in theirs. They're not monogamous. They're polygamous, and they will have multiple wives, multiple children. It's quite something. But again, this tribe lives. They're mostly plant-based. They revere the pig. Now, Wam in the Dani language means pig. Notice the name of the village. The name of the area is called Wamena. They named it after the pig. Now, there's wild pigs everywhere. They have pet pigs. They will eat maybe a pig once a month because they don't want to kill their own pigs. They're their family. So the neighbors and stuff, they kind of swap between them. They will do some chicken, but mostly they're definitely plant-based. This is a plant-based. There's fruit everywhere. No one can go hungry. Everywhere you go, there's the most unbelievable fruit you've ever seen. And it's all, there's no cell towers. There's no glyphosate. There's no pesticides, no toxic chemicals, no fertilizers. Everything is grown ancestrally. And it is the most beautiful food I've ever seen. Most beautiful food.
Wow.
And so here we are. We're with the chief. This is the chief over there, and that's Chief Mabel. And he was. If you looked at the other picture, you saw a 370-year-old mummy was in that one of the pictures.
Yeah.
That was his ancestor, and so that it's always the Mabel family is handed down, unlike the tribes in Africa. So it's got to be a family members in these tribes that continue on. If you'll notice the children in this picture, they have a descended stomach. Okay, so if you think about it, guys, it's like the kwashiorkor. So see how their stomachs are distended? That's usually an indication of low protein, malnutrition, and that's low protein. They're not getting a lot. And so that was one of the first things I noted. And I said to Chris, I said, no, check that out, and
Yeah.
so that's very sad.
Yeah.
Again, but they're eating mostly plants. So what I found, so then I'm so, being an educator, I used to teach my students about, where did our ancestors get salt from? And so this area, I said to them, I said, how do you get salt? And they said, we have a salt spring. I said, you do? And so we had to hike a mountain, and at the top of the mountain, and that's where Chris injured his knee. And he already had a knee in already previous, and so this has exacerbated it. So anyway, so if you see this woman in this picture,
Yeah.
so she was carrying this big, like a banana tree, part of the banana tree. It's not the banana, but it's part of the tree. And she took a stick, and she's scraping and scraping. And so I have a video I'll be posting of this as well. And I think I did post this. And she's taking the fibers, and it's so genius that they figured this out in history and through ancestral living. And they're basically removing the fibers so that it becomes more absorbent.
The next slide.
And so it comes in layers,
Okay.
and she's going to peel those layers apart after she's taken all of, taken the cell membranes and really opened them up. Where we go into so here we get into the spring. And so she's starting to squeeze it and twist it and turn. So I jump in with her. I'm like, I gotta do this with her, So we're squishing and squeezing for a half an hour, and we're taking all of the salt water from the spring, and it's basically being impregnated into this banana stalk, the different layers. And so then once it's all done, she wads it all up, and then we take it back to the tribe, and they dry it.
This is interesting. So this is how our ancestors did have access to salt and sodium. So,
Well, in this particular region.
in this tribe,
In this region, yes.
but
and so
sodium is not it's detrimental to our health. It is a
and wait till you
needed.
find out. Wait till you see as we move on. You're gonna be like, it's gonna make you rethink everything. You will rethink everything. Okay, so a lot of the gurus out there who are saying we need, wrong. So anyway, and they don't really use a lot because and so she had me taste it, and I was like, there's really not much there. It was very minimal. And so they take this back and they dry them. They hang them and dry them. And then they can either break it off and they can chew it if they want, or they'll just put them into where they're cooking. They'll just drop little pieces in. And they don't really use hardly any spices. Salt is not that important to them. It's not because it's so small. It was not like the kind of salt you would think. It is not salty at all. It was very minor, very small, very small.
That's really interesting because inevitably they're sweating a lot,
Mhm.
and they don't.
But I'll tell you what
prioritize.
the tribes think, and especially
Okay.
in Africa and stuff. It's so profound. It's so profound. It's not what we think, guys. It's not what we think. So this is the next. So the next tribe, it's a smaller Dani tribe, and this is the day that they were going to. I had to go alone because Chris just didn't. He just couldn't go, and so I went alone. And this is where I started getting the aha idea of I can do this on my own. I need to do this on my own, and so that's where I started already planning. I'm going to go to Africa when I get home. And so we went to this tribe, and this is the kitchen. So this is their kitchen inside, and they have just their fire pits. There was the fire pits, and so of course the women, of course, are not clothed on the top, and so they've always got a fire going, and they've got the other tribe did not have any grass on the ground. It was just like a dirt, but they had this very lovely, very nice and soft. It was fresh grass, and they always said that they're always changing it out, so it's very nice and it smelled so beautiful. But here's the thing. They smoke unbelievably cigarettes, like there's no tomorrow, and they're smoking our kind of cigarettes.
Really?
Okay, so the tribes in Africa are smoking. They grow their own tobacco. These guys are smoking our cigarettes,
How did that happen?
it's being brought to them by the tourists.
No.
And I keep saying, guys, if you're a tourist, please. And the tourists are bringing them candy. The tourists are bringing them potato chips. The tourists are bringing these things. You're also going to see that there's also a shack that I'll show you that they have access to, which is they're popping up in all the traditional communities. It's greed. It's greed. They're trying to get everywhere. These stores they're going to be wherever they can possibly be to sell.
Yeah.
So here we are. They're showing how they've got sweet potatoes everywhere. They grow sweet potatoes everywhere. And it's every kind of version you can imagine, every color you can imagine. So they don't, of course, their tools are very, very, it's a stick. And so they're digging them out. Then they go down to like another spring or like a puddle region, and we're washing the potatoes that we're going to be cooking for the day. And so that was my whole thing. I wanted to see how. I've heard so much about the tribes that we wrote about it in our book. We wrote about the tribes in our book that were eating mostly sweet potatoes. This isn't the same tribe, but it's a similar region.
So this Dani tribe, they were a high sweet potato diet.
Very high carb, extreme, high carb.
Yes.
Now, here we go. We go, and we're going to go out, and we're going to be finding all of the plant matter to cook. And of course, I had no idea. I know I studied how they're going to do it. I hadn't seen a lot of really great pictures on it, but I knew they're going to do an earthen pit oven. And I thought, I can't wait to see how this is done. So here we are. You can see the first picture. We've gone and collected different kinds of grasses and plants. With all the second and the third, they've got big sticks and so forth. But look how they're carrying them. They're moving, people. And this is another key part we have to remember. They move. They are not sitting. Okay, they're lifting. They're cutting. They're bending. They're moving all the time. They're squatting to go to the bathroom. That's another big thing we have to talk about, guys. And I've got videos to go on. I've got another YouTube channel. It's called Fountain of Youth TV. And I've got like over 100 videos on there. And a couple of them are teaching you how to squat and the importance of squatting. I did those like 10 years ago. So I'm kind of way ahead of everybody on this stuff.
So this is just showing how much work they put into
just to cook the potatoes.
Just to cook. They're building their oven.
Yes, there's two fires they have to do. The first one where you see the girl, she's bending over, she's blowing, she's getting that fire. Those first two pictures, okay, this one right here where the smoke's coming out, that's not cooking the potatoes. That's cooking the rocks that's going to cook the potatoes. So they're literally going to make these rocks scorching hot. And so that's the first phase. They have to make these rocks scorching hot. While those are cooking, we're over here. There's another pit. This is where the earthen pit oven is going to be. We're lining this with all these different long green grasses. The key is they're green because the water in the plants is going to help to steam the plants. Okay, it's brilliant. It's just brilliant, absolutely brilliant how they've done this. It's like making a convection. It's so beautiful. So we're lining it and lining it and lining it. Tons and tons of these beautiful green, lush plants.
Yep.
Suze, do they make this every day?
Well, you'll see.
Okay.
I think because this is a small tribe,
Yeah.
and so they're doing like over 100 of these potatoes. You can see them all. So the first one over here, you can see that he's got a pandan fruit, which is very rare for them to pick. But pandan fruit, if you research them, are known to have a huge vitamin C, antioxidants. And because I was there, they thought it was a celebration. And you'll notice that the man, his legs, it looks like he's wearing pants. He's not. That's mud and ash and so forth, and pig fat that he's put on, because for celebrations, they will do that. They'll put that on their skin to celebrate.
Oh, wow.
You can see he just has a kotika on. It's just the gourd. It's just
okay. Yeah.
And so now and I'm thinking, I've never had a pandan fruit. I've studied them, but I've never had it. So they don't use anything on the inside. It's just thrown out. It's the seeds. The whole outside is nothing but seeds and seeds and seeds. So I'm thinking, what are they going to do with the seeds? I'm not going to eat seeds because I don't digest seeds. So you'll see what they do. Then the middle slide, she's taken and she's made like a grasping tool, and she's picking up those scorching hot stones and she's putting them into the earthen oven pit.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You see them? See all the stones in there?
Yeah.
Okay. Now you can see all the potatoes are in there, but now they're putting more stones on top of them. So there's stones underneath them, and now there's hot stones on top of them. And then on top of that, they put the pandan fruit.
Wow. Look at how many different varieties
Isn't
of
it
sweet
beautiful?
potatoes.
I was like, wow. I was like, this is going to be so good. Now, then they take all of the grasses and they fold it up. They take all that grass and they put it over the top of it. And then he went and got a big vine from a tree and made it like a rope. Everything's I was just like, oh, this is so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And they wrap it around it, and then they put more stones on top. And it steams for an hour.
Wow.
Now, while it's steaming for an hour, they said, let's go sit in the hut. And they had their cigarettes going. But they also had more sweet potatoes just stuck in the fire. Okay? And so we go, of course, I didn't go into that. So I'm just telling you what happened in that story. So then we go in, and I'm sitting there, of course, I'm coughing like crazy because they're just smoking like crazy, and plus the smoke from the fire and everything. But they never smoke. They never cough. Even when we climbed the mountain, we're climbing this, and they're smoking away. And there wasn't a sound, no wheezing, no emphysema, no coughing, nothing, which was remarkable. And we wrote about this in the book too. We thought, is it because they eat so purely that their body is able to is a protective source. I don't know, but they don't have lung cancer. They don't have anything like that in these tribes that are heavy smokers, and they're also.
How long have they been smoking cigarettes like from the US?
I think that to me, I think that's fairly new. But they've been smoking it in history. They've been smoking tobacco forever. They've been doing tobacco for a long time. And also, when you look at research, that a lot of the tribes that they're breathing in so much the smoke from where they're living in their huts, that the creosote, like if you think about in your chimneys, we have creosote that builds up inside of our chimneys, which is very toxic and so forth. But you'd be thinking that all of these toxins would be in their lungs. There's nothing. Over the years, there has been nothing. But I said to Chris the same thing. I said, I wonder, because now they're smoking our cigarettes, are they going to start noticing a change? But they weren't coughing at all. I was doing the coughing, and they were not coughing whatsoever.
Well, isn't it that our cigarettes contain a lot of like microplastics and dyes and
also formaldehyde? It's got over 1,000 chemicals added to the cigarettes that are deadly. I mean, if you research cigarettes, what they're made of, it's like shocking. It's just shocking. It's not just tobacco. They put so many chemicals. So yes, I'm going to be interested to watch to see what's going to happen with their health now. So then finally the potatoes are done, and they open it up, and they're handing me the fruit, and it was just so delicious. I mean, they don't put anything on it, nothing. And then the pandan fruit, they hand me the skin after she's scraped all the seeds off, and I'm watching what to do with it. I'm thinking, are we going to swallow this? But they're just chewing on it. It's very fibrous, and then they spit it out. And so I did that, and then they took the juice, and they had me taste it. It was very bitter. It was not sweet.
Interesting.
It was very bitter. And so
what's the fruit? Give us a description of what the fruit meat tasted like.
It was bitter. It was very just very fibrous, and just, I was chewing it. I was watching what they were doing, getting the liquid, getting the moisture out of it. And the nutrients, I'm sure that there's nutrients in it. You're getting your vitamins. It's very high in vitamin C. It's got the magnesium and potassium that you would have in a fruit. But this is known. If you study the pandan fruit and you look it up, it's very high in terms of healing properties. And this is what the tribe thinks of it as. This is a very high.
Well, Suze, I have a question. Did they eat this like before they started eating the sweet potatoes?
No, the potatoes were starting to eat because it took her so long.
Oh, okay.
To hear it, squeeze it, and everything. So we were already starting to eat the potato, and then she had squeezed it out. And I've got videos and things of this. You can just see her squeezing it, and then we were drinking it, and I was like, wow.
Well, so I wonder if the bitterness of that fruit, it kind of helps with bile production and stomach acid.
I think there's absolutely. And I'm also thinking, just like in Africa, are a lot of these things also anti-parasitic? Are they also, there's a lot of things that we have to think about, because their environment is so full of parasites and bacterias and antibacterial, antimicrobials. It's the same thing that they brush their teeth with. We'll talk about that later too. It's so, oh my gosh, you guys, it's just so profound, because everything is in nature that we need. And you'll see as we go along, this aha moment. We don't need the things that we have. It's there for us. If we're eating from nature, and every tribe will tell you the same thing. All the healers are in the plants. And that's what they go to. Even when we think of the Maasai, who are very carnivore based, they said they can't live without the plants. The plants are healing.
Did they eat the sweet potato skins?
No, most of the time they did peel. There were some, like when the ones that we ate in the fire, that were in the fire, I said to them, these are high in oxalates. And they look at me like, huh? And I just said, so they were laughing. And I said, these are the things that we talk about in the nutrition field, that there's toxins in plants. And they're like, well, some plants are poison, but they said most of them are not. They said, we need these are nutrients, And so the ones they gave me that we ate in the hut, they said, eat the skin. And it had ashes and everything all over it. But again, think about this, guys. Ash is healing. Ash is something that when you research ash, it can be very healing. It's very powerful for the stomach in terms of helping. There's a lot of things that it's so ancestral that we have to think about. And even the dirt, I remember my grandmother always said to me, the one that lived with the tribes, she would tell me, eat the dirt. She would go out in the garden, she'd pull out things, don't wash it, eat the dirt. And this is before we all knew about gut microbiome. The tribes already knew this. She said there's special germs in there that you need. And she said, eat them.
Now, does the ash function similarly to like a charcoal?
Yes.
Okay, that's
Activated
cool.
charcoal.
Yes. And so this is the whole, so there's like, don't wipe it off, eat it. Eat it.
Wow.
It's so beautiful, you guys. It's beautiful. This is the shack I've been telling you about. And they're throughout all the countries. All the countries.
Wow.
Yeah. Even Dr. Chafee and I, when I was on one of his podcasts, and I'll be doing another one of him coming up, he said the same thing when he's lived with indigenous tribes, when he was studying, I think he did a rotation, I'm not sure where, in Korea or one of the places. And he said the same thing. They had these small little shack type things, and they had all the processed food right there for the tribes to have.
Oh.
And it's the same thing here. So you'll see there's a screen on the outside. You can't go in it. So she'll stand behind the screen, this woman standing here, and you'll go up to it and you'll ask her, tell her what you want. And in this, it's got the cigarettes, it's got the seed oils, it's got the candy, the potato chips, but it's got clothing. It's also got the feminine hygiene products that some of the tribes are just starting to use now. Normally, the Dani tribe girls, when they get their periods, they go to a different building. They go to a different hut. And you stay there for that time, those days that you have your period.
Wow.
And this is with the African people don't do that. They just mean it is what it is, you know. They'll wear they may wear a special necklace or put a bead or something on that makes their husband aware that they're in their time of month, and so that's kind of how they signify that it's, because you don't talk about those things. You don't talk about. They just have a special thing that shows this is my time of month.
Oh wow.
I'm not available. It's
That's
beautiful
interesting.
things. The children do not wear diapers, but they will sell diapers there now because I think they're trying to Americanize everybody.
Yeah.
And the children do not. They do not. They just, if they have to go, they just go. And it's how they're trained. But they train very quickly. They train very quickly. But it was very, very powerful to see these. I'm like, and of course, none of the tribe, they don't have cars, but they're always within walking distance.
This is a silly question, but do they like pay for these things?
And this is how how they get money is they will go to you saw the market, one of my first slides, the market. They will go and sell all their vegetables and fruits that they grow.
Oh.
And this is so they can buy their cigarettes.
Wow. So
That's
they can
so
go to
sad.
these shacks and buy things.
And they can buy things now. And this is how they're trying to do it. Or they'll raise chickens and they'll sell the eggs.
Oh, that's cool.
And so, or they'll make jewelry and they'll sell the jewelry so that they can go, and they're starting to now incorporate these things. Same with seed oils. We're seeing some of the tribes are starting to add the seed oils because they're being told that they're healthy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. They're being westernized.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sus, were you able to tell them like avoid this? Like,
Yes. So our translators would tell them what we would be saying. I'd say, please tell them that please don't. And I would show them pictures on my phone of what happens. So I was showing them what some of the people that are not healthy in our country. This is what happens when we eat food that we're not designed to eat.
Yeah.
You know, and they're like, what? You know, they're you know, and we saw it. We saw people who have left the tribes that have moved into these regions where they can just they're just eating now processed food, and they are enormous. The obesity in the regions was just unbelievable.
Really?
When we went to Samoa, what you'll see, it was just shocking.
Yeah.
So this is, again, I'll always kind of wrap up. So in Wamena, the seed oil we found there was, again, palm oil, because that's in that region. They've got factories that make it. So that's the one they're going to use. But again, if it's the one you're going to use, I wish it would have been more olive oil, but it was palm oil. Interestingly, though, get this. One of the first questions I asked them, because you're thinking the Pacific Islands and everything I've ever researched, we wrote about it heavily in our book, and this is why I don't believe I research, guys. And hopefully we can get everyone to start thinking this. They always talk about coconut oil was so big in the Pacific Islands. I asked every tribe, do you use coconut oil? And they all said, coconut oil? We don't use coconut oil. And I said, you don't? And I said, but we've been told you do. We don't. And I said, what do you cook with? Coconut milk, coconut water, coconut cream. I said, what do you use coconut oil for? Our hair and our skin, maybe. But they said it just takes too long to make.
Oh, wow.
So we've been kind of misled on that one too, guys. They were all using, especially when you'll see the tribes later on, they were really using a lot of coconut milk. And it was There's no oil. They're not cooking with oil, the coconut oil at all.
So just to this Wamena, this was the Dani tribe,
Yes.
and Wamena stood for pork,
For pig.
and they didn't really eat. They ate pork on occasion.
Yep, very rarely, maybe once or twice a month, if that. And they might do chicken because there was, chickens walking around too. But mostly they are the sweet potato. They're now doing cabbage, and of course there's avocado, but the seasonal things too. But they grow a lot of their things now. And again, I still wonder how indigenous are those plants? Were they brought? And when you research it, you'll see some of these plants were brought from other countries, hundreds of years ago. And some also indicate that maybe even birds have flown and maybe dropped things off, or things have washed up onto places. So there's just so many things, when you think of the different researchers who have come and gone over the past couple hundred years that bring things to the islands. How really truly indigenous are these plants in Africa? We'll talk about that when we get there, because
high sweet potato diet, so high starch.
Yes.
But that's also a lot of oxalates that they were eating, so they didn't concern themselves of oxalates.
No, and I asked them about that. I said, "Do you have any joint pain?" I asked if they had vulvodynia, because I get that. For girls who don't know, that's when your private region down there, the pain becomes horrible. But I will say, Ash, thank you to you, darling girl, because because I'm now doing dairy for the first time in like decades, raw dairy from Ash. I think that's ushering out a lot of my oxalates, because I've increased that now, and I don't have problems now.
Did you have oxalate issues when you were in Wamena eating the sweet potatoes with them?
And I thought I would, because I hadn't been eating a lot of oxalates before that. I was just doing, just a couple bananas and an avocado, and that was it. And when I got there, I said, I'm going to eat whatever they give me. And even though I have a lot of allergies, I'm just going to deal with it, which I had diarrhea throughout the whole time I was there. Because I'm allergic to coconut, and coconut was in everything. I was like, but anyway, and I didn't have any pain. I didn't. Maybe it's because I had been a long time. I had so much oxalates, but I didn't. And but Ash, before I went, I was already starting to put in dairy, and I think that was a big piece for me.
So calcium, just for the audience, calcium helps to reduce oxalate absorption. And so I guess, did the Dani tribe have any calcium in their diet?
There's no dairy. There's no dairy in any of the places we went to. They do not have dairy
in this area.
In this region, yeah. In Africa, that's a whole different. It's like we're going from two different opposites. Because wait till you get to Africa, it's not at all what you thought either. There, it's two extremes, two total extremes.
Okay, so
did they just sell their chicken eggs? They didn't really eat the chicken eggs.
These guys would eat some, but it didn't seem to be very important to them. And it's the same in Africa. Africa, they will not. They don't touch the eggs. They don't know.
Interesting.
Maasai will not touch an egg. The Maasai will not touch fish. Maasai will not touch a wild animal. They will only, which we'll get there. Oh, it's so exciting. Oh my gosh, you guys.
Okay. All right. So next tribe in the same Pacific Islands. So
but a different country. Now we're going to Honiara, the Salomon Islands. And these are all different countries. You got to remember, they're little teeny tiny little countries, but they're different countries. So this, when we get off the plane, this is what we're greeted to. If you see the tribesmen, I'm like, oh my goodness, look how beautiful they are. See them? Aren't they beautiful?
Wow. What are they using to paint themselves?
The different things. A lot of times it could be like ash and pork fat and things like that. So they just make everything's from the plants. It's from the plants. They do. Now this region, they're not. This is me totally different. There really weren't any. Sadly to say, there really weren't any pure tribal indigenous tribes. Really hard. They're difficult to find. We can find people who are trying to live as close to their ancestral diet as possible, but they're not living in huts.
Yeah.
So we would travel out to find people and talk with them and find people who were living as close as possible. But processed food has totally inundated this region.
So when you get there, I'm assuming these people are unsuspecting of your arrival. Do you just show up and say, "I'm here to observe"? What do you do? In
this region, the Dani people knew we had our translator. I already contacted him. So I had to do a lot of months and months of thought work to get these prepared. You have to find your translators, your guides, and where the tribes you want to go to talk with. And then most of the time they can have things organized for us. You don't just want to show up because you can't do that.
Yeah.
But in this region, in Honiara, there really wasn't, I couldn't find one that was truly indigenous living. But so my guide would just take us and you'll see what happens as we go. I'll tell you.
Okay.
But you can see here, again, there's their oils. And we found palm oil, again, in Honiara was the big oil that was used.
Okay.
Again, but their processed food wasn't just palm oil. They had the canola and the soybean and the corn oil. That was in all of their processed food.
That's really sad.
Now Chris isn't a tin fish eater. I used to do before I started getting histamine issues. I was always eating sardines because I wanted the calcium and I wanted everything I could get out of the sardines because I wasn't doing dairy at the time. And so I became really proficient on finding the best sardines I could find. And I was always say, don't ever buy anything in oil. You've got to buy either water or spring water. And I always found spring water. And he didn't understand it because he didn't buy canned fish. And I said, we need to look at what their tinned fish is because they eat a lot of tinned fish. I kept interviewing all the people. Oh, we like tinned fish. And I was like, oh, that's where it's coming from. Because like, what are you talking about? I said, tinned fish. Most of it's packed in soybean oil. He's like, what? So we looked and it was soybean everywhere. Soybean or canola or corn oil was found in the tinned fish. And so then I started teaching everyone, if you're going to buy the tinned fish, but most of the stores didn't sell the tinned fish in water. They're kind of stuck. And that's where they're getting a lot of these that's coming from is the tinned fish because they eat so much of it. But boy, they've got a lot of processed food just like we do there.
Dang.
And it's everywhere. So now we're going to go to Samoa. And in Samoa, I was so excited to go there because they're known to be a pristine group of people, very tall, very kind of reminded me a lot of Maasai, just very healthy. But if you look at research now, they're known to be one of the most highest regions of diabetes in the world. And so I was kind of afraid what we were going to meet. So when we got there, of course, there's always these beautiful markets everywhere. And this is where they make their money. The tribes will come and sell all their beautiful produce that they grow. And it was just beautiful. Again, no chemicals. There was nothing. And I was sleeping, and I'm not a good sleeper. I will say there, I think because the EMFs, and Ashley and I've talked about this before.
Yeah.
There was no EMF. I wasn't getting, my heart palpitations and shaking. The food was so clean. I was just sleeping like 5 hours a night, which is huge for me.
Wow.
And I was dreaming for the first time. It was like huge for
and
me.
you're probably just so in tune with your circadian rhythm.
Absolutely.
Nothing was artificial.
Everything was, I was becoming so ancestral, which is so beautiful. Now this, again, they don't, even in the homes, this is Livingston. He's an 82-year-old Samoan, but you could see, even though he lives ancestrally, we're guessing he's probably getting about 15% processed food in his diet.
Oh, sad.
And he was getting, he's getting the abdomen's getting large. He's gaining weight. Over here, this first picture over here that's his kitchen. They don't have kitchens in their homes. They only cook outside. So there's an open fire pit in this little building here, and his whole backyard is nothing but the most beautiful fruit you've ever seen.
Wow.
Coconuts, pineapple, mangoes, you name it, he's got it growing there, and you can just go pick it. Here he's got some green coconut that he's opening for us, and at this point I've never had fresh coconut water. Of course I don't, because I'm going to have some problems. But I promised myself it doesn't matter what my issues are. I'm going to eat whatever and drink whatever they offer me. And
you should be so proud of that. Like, that's a really hard mindset I'm trying to put myself in your shoes, and we are so ingrained, in control.
Yes.
When you go through a health journey, you have so much control.
Yes.
So you should be really proud of yourself. I'm excited to experience this.
Thanks, here. But I just knew, if I have to go, I'm just going to go out and squat somewhere,
Right.
I got to do what I got to do.
Suze, you mentioned that they have the highest rate of diabetes. Is that based on their ancestral diet, or because we're bringing all of our processed food in?
This is only over the past couple of years. This is
Okay.
very new. They never had it. This is what's so heartbreaking. Now, this is their kitchen outside. You can see what they're cooking in the pots and pans. You can see this is sea eel.
Mm.
Okay.
Wow.
And guess what it's cooking in? Coconut milk.
Oh, wow. Cool.
So it's not oil, it's not coconut
Okay,
oil.
what was eating eel like?
We'll tell you that in a minute.
Okay.
And this was I'll tell you, it's on the table. I've got it labeled on the next slide coming up. It's one of the I think it's taro leaves.
Yeah.
So you love taro. Taro is like a sweet potato, but it's another high oxalate food. So taro and cassava are extremely popular also. In this, especially in this region and in Vanuatu, taro and cassava are more consumed than sweet potatoes.
Well, again, another consistent trend is that these tribes were eating a lot of starches.
Yes, very much so. But these people now, they also eat a lot of seafood because the Dani tribe were so high up in the mountains, they're not even close to seafood. They can't get fish. So of course, it'd be more plant-based, but yet they had plenty of pigs. They were wild. You would be driving and pigs are just walking around roads. They're everywhere. So it's not that they don't have enough of them, but they don't. They just won't eat them. They'll eat them a little bit, but not much. So here they are. They're showing us how they're going to make the coconut milk and coconut cream. So they take the coconut and they scrape it on the end, as you can see where he's pointing to on that bench. There's he just scrapes around it and keeps twisting and twisting and twisting. And the coconut grains or peels fall into the pan below it. So if you go down below, so see how they're falling into that.
Yeah.
Okay. Then they're going to take this form of a grass and they're going to squeeze it. And there's a video I have out on my social media. You can watch me actually doing it. And this is this boy that's here. His name was Norman. He's the nephew of Livingston, the 82-year-old man. So he was there to help us. You can see he's a little larger. He's eating processed food, so then they squeeze it out, and you have fresh coconut milk. And I said, well, how do you make the cream? And they said that's going to take another process where it's going to have to you're going to use more of the material there that's
the meat.
Make it more thicker. It's going to make it more thick. And if you're going to do the oil, you'd lay it out on a stone or somewhere for a couple of days, and the sun would help the oil to come out of it. And you could slowly, but they said it's so time consuming. They don't use a lot of it.
You can see the difference in his little bit of a belly is definitely different than the malnourished protein deficiency belly.
But, yeah, and of course, then you go to Africa. It's a whole different ball game. When you see what they're built like, So we do have to kind of question things. Let me go back to the Dani tribe. If you notice there that there's so much to talk about with this, as they aged, they became so frail, like they were going to break.
It seems like they were a little bit sagging.
Yes, and the women were very sagging skin. They were aging rapidly. Their teeth, a lot of them didn't have teeth. And again, I'm thinking to myself, is it the cigarette smoking that's causing this? But when you look at Westernization Price, though, you look at his literature, it's very similar. I think because they aren't getting we need the fat soluble vitamins. They're getting plenty of D. Can't say they're not getting enough. They're getting plenty of vitamin D because they're in the sun all day long. But the K2, I think that K2 is a huge piece of this. I think huge, because you're going to see another tribe coming up that eats a lot of fish. These guys eat a pretty good amount of fish as well. So they were very healthy. Their teeth were beautiful, but they're gaining weight.
So if they historically didn't have access to the fat soluble vitamins, how have they survived so well through time without just completely just be poor health, disintegrating?
And this is and we wrote about this in the book. They were healthy, but they weren't pristine.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so they could live. They were living. One of the men that was there, he was in the Dani tribe, was so tiny. He looked like he was 100 years old to me. But remember, they don't keep records, so none of them will be able to tell you how old they are. They can only guess. So he was thinking he might be in his 80s.
Okay, that is really interesting, because think about the psychological power it has over you to know, I'm this age. If you just don't know, you could probably, now age doesn't have a hold over you. I think that's kind of really interesting to think about. Yeah.
And they don't think about age. It's not important to them. They live, tomorrow isn't important. They live. Every single tribe lives for just this moment. They're living in that moment, and it was just so what a different. It was just such a different. Everything was so different and so refreshing. Like if you hear my videos, you always hear me say, "Oh my gosh, I just feel so alive here." There's just nothing toxic. There's nothing,
Yeah.
no toxic thoughts, nothing. It was just nothing but beautifulness.
Yeah.
You know, it was so ancestral. It's so beautiful.
So this is the Samoa tribe.
Yes. Now this is what. So this was the meal that they've prepared for us. Okay. Now in the mugs, that's called cocoa Samoa, and they grow cocoa beans there, and they take those cocoa beans and they grind them down and they make like, to me it tasted like hot chocolate.
Well, that's interesting because in the 1700s in America, like chocolate was used more than coffee. Like cocoa beans was pretty prized.
And this is huge. This is prized for them. This is their beverage. They make it just with water. It's not with milk because they don't use dairy. Some may probably use maybe coconut milk, but this was made with water. I'm also allergic to chocolate, so I get migraines. So I just took a little sip of it, but it was delicious. It was delicious. I mean, because I haven't had chocolate forever. It was wonderful. And then they've got breadfruit and bananas. Now it's boiled bananas. Their boiled bananas, I believe, are plantain. I think they're plantains.
Yeah.
They boiled it again in coconut milk, and they were kind of hard, very starchy tasting. You know, and then of course they have the taro leaves were cooked in also coconut milk. We've got the coconut water over here. You can see the sea eel. That was interesting. It was just nothing but small little bones, tiny little bones everywhere. So I was like pulling little bones out of my mouth. It was okay. There really wasn't a lot of flavor to it, just different. It was just, but the bones, I was just making sure I wasn't swallowing those. A neighbor, because they don't have chickens and things in this region, they had doves, the birds that they catch out in their backyard. It was a dove that they had cooked over the fire, and so we had a fire cooked dove also as well.
How was
And
that?
so it was so that would be their ancestral diet. That's how they would eat in the Samoa.
Yes, carbs and protein, not much fat, a little bit of fat in the fish, or
Yeah.
I guess
And
the
even the
coconut.
fish, it was just so it was. I don't even know if there probably not a lot in that fish, not a lot. The coconut milk will have some, yes, it will. Yeah. And so again, we also found in Samoa, we found palm oil was also, look how big their wall of oil is. So we found that, but we also found soybean oil was heavily used in all their processed food. And tinned fish, again, now here's the key. Their tinned fish only had soybean oil, and these people eat a ton of tinned fish. We only found one person that was not obese.
Wow.
Really?
Not talking about that tribe, but when we're walking around in Samoa, in the populated region, everyone was obese, overweight and obese. It was shocking.
So the big difference between this area and the original Dani was there's a lot more processed food infiltrated.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the Dani tribe, they're so far up in the mountains that they can't really get to it. Yes, there's that little shack down below, but it's quite, they've got to walk quite a ways to get there. And a lot of them still believe in their diets. They believe so much. And I keep telling them, don't change. Stick with your ancestral diet. I wish you could eat a little bit more pork though. You know,
Yeah.
we need a little bit more of that and stop the smoking. But
So I'm curious if in another generation we would revisit this and see if slowly they start to like in America start to lose the knowledge of like how, for example, on the slide you wrote, they're typically cooking with the liquid of the coconut. If like over time that
becomes it'll be
is
seed oils.
obsolete. Yeah, so there's no longer that. They're just literally using everything convenience like we do in America.
And I think it's going to happen because I know in Africa there was a tribe I wanted to go and visit, and they're using seed oils, and I said maybe the next time I come up we'll just like go there just to talk with them and maybe to educate them.
Yeah.
But they're eating so much ugali now, and they're putting the seed oils right in the ugali. I'm like, oh golly.
Oh golly. Oh goodness.
Ugali. So it's just it's so sad to see, and I'm so afraid that a lot of these tribes are becoming extinct because they're changing
like
we are.
described in the Dani
Yeah,
Dani tribe. it took like their whole day was like, you know, building this fire, building this oven, cooking the sweet potato. Whereas now they could just walk into the store and grab something. So it's sad to think that this whole, it's not even just their nutrition, it's the whole lifestyle shift.
It's a lifestyle. And that's what I kept telling everybody. I said, you guys, your movement is key. And when you see the tribes in Africa, and I'm talking with people in their hundreds, okay? I'm talking with them. And they're saying the same thing. It's vital. We have to move. And they believe, and this is part of my research I'm finding, is that is, I believe, one of the key tickets as to why they are able to assimilate these high saturated fat diets, because they're walking 15, 20 miles a day.
That's a zone 2 cardio.
You know, and they're you know, it's sometimes, you know, they have to do lifting, and they have to you know, build their fences, build their homes. The women, wait till you see what the women are doing. You'll be like, what? And you can't believe. I mean, it's just,
this is an Africa?
Again, it's like 7 days worth of information, guys. It's so much stuff.
I'm like looking at it, I'm like, I don't even know if we can, you know, like, I don't want like some information to get lost because there's so much. Like, how are you even recalling all this? It's just incredible.
It's in me for the rest of my life. It's like, I just wish so badly when I take you on my next one, you guys are going to be, you'll just never be the same.
So I just want everyone to reflect on something really quickly. We produce so much soybean oil that it shows up in the tin fish in an Indigenous Tribes shopping center. Like, hello, red flag. That shouldn't be happening.
No, it's wrong. It's so wrong, you know. But they don't even offer them. You'll see in Vanatu, which I was like ready to do cartwheels down the aisle. They understood it. It depends on the region when they understand health and they understand what they want to provide for people. Because boy, there's a difference in how the community looks. It's so, and what they have in the stores. You know, we have to be able to go to our stores and say, this is what we want in our stores. I do the same thing here with my stores. I tell them, this is what I need. I need to have this in my store. But most of my food comes from you guys now. I don't even have to really go shopping anymore.
This is a plug for www.nursecooperative.com.
Everyone knows, if you know me, I only tell you what I've researched. I'm not here to make any money off of anybody. When I take my expeditions, this expedition was covered mostly by the Ancestral Health Foundation. But my really long expedition I went to in Africa, I paid for out of my own life savings, because I believe then it's me and the people. We're doing. No one's telling me what to say. No one's telling me what I have to do. No one's I can go and do exactly who I want to live with. I don't have to be in a hotel. I can live with the tribes. I can do and I can share the truth. I don't have to have anything edited. I can show this is what's happening.
Yeah.
And then you guys are all helping me. The people are saying, you know, think about this, think about that. And people were doing that. It was so beautiful while I was there, you guys, doing live Instagrams. And people would say to me, you know, Suze, what is this? Ask this question. They were telling me wonderful questions. And think about this, things I hadn't thought about. And so to me, it's the people. I'm working for the people. I'm not working for anyone. I'm working for you guys and God.
Blessing.
And you know, it's so fun. It's so fun to do this. We're finding the truth, guys. I'll be the investigator. We'll find the truth.
Yes.
Now we've been watching. This was like the moment, you know.
So again, for the audience, again, we are still in the Pacific Islands, which are off Australia. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And so now we're going to Vanatu and look at this tribe. This tribe was, and I've got some amazing videos, especially of Yevi. Yevi is the older man holding the coconut. He's not sure. He thinks he's probably around my age, around 60ish. He's not sure. But if you go to the next tribe, but notice the children. Notice that this is I can't remember his name. He was just wonderful. But look how their body is. Okay, look how his abs are. They're not flabby. They're very toned. Their teeth were beautiful. They were not smoking. They all go barefoot. It's a big thing. I'm all about barefoot. You know, they're grounding all the time. But you'll see in Africa, there's something that you can't do there.
Yeah.
But they're grounding all the time. Yevi is a warrior for this tribe. He walks on hot coals, hot stones. And they showed how hot it was because they poured water on it. And I was like, oh, golly. And he was walking on it, and I didn't bother him at all. Pain is part of their cultures. In the Dani tribe, I wish I should have kept the slide on. When someone dies, the women especially, they will cut off a finger, and that's to remember the sadness and the pain of losing this person, the sadness of this person no longer being there to help the community.
Oh, wow.
It's profound.
Just
So
one
there's-
finger, or everybody like, how do we have hands?
Each person that dies, you would cut a finger off.
Everybody cuts a finger off?
No. Just nowadays, the younger generation doesn't do that, but the older generation. So I was talking with the women who have done it. And you'll see it on my. I should have put it on here. There was just thousands of pictures. I didn't know how to cut, but you see me holding her hand, and 2 of her fingers are missing. And she talked about usually they would use a sharp stone, just to cut it off.
That's beautifully symbolic. Yeah.
It's hugely symbolic. But the tribes, there's always something with pain that they do. And so with the warriors, you have to suffer something. So this is how you show how strong you are. You can withstand extreme pain. It's the same thing in Africa. They withstand unbelievable pain.
Wow.
We're such wimps, It's like, oh, really? Like, oh, my golly, So again, they were just so beautiful, so healthy. Their teeth were beautiful. They had all their teeth. They did not. The Dani tribe, most of them were missing a lot of their teeth. It was just not good. Now, if you want to see this is him showing how they brush their teeth. This is Yevi. Oh, I think I gotta turn the sound up.
Wow.
He's biting into a coconut. Now he's going to use that coconut skin, and he's scrubbing his teeth. Most people would be bleeding. The gingival tissue would be bleeding. Look at it.
Jaw muscles. Talk about those jaw muscles.
Isn't it beautiful?
Wow.
But look at him. He's in his 60s. He's just his skin is beautiful. He says that's how we brush our teeth.
Yeah, that's so antimicrobial.
Isn't it beautiful?
Yeah.
And so we asked them. You can hear Chris. He's asking, do you eat sugar cane? Yep, they a lot of sugar cane. Oh, here we go. Sometimes you go. I typed in what he's saying. If we're thirsty, they'll chew on sugar cane. Can you hear it where you guys are?
Wow.
So again, if you want to go on, you could watch this on my channels. You'll see these things on them.
Amazing.
So he gave us a wealth of information. So again, in Vanatu, this was amazing. In Vanatu, there you go. So we found the prevalent oil there with palm oil. However, I was so ecstatic to see that the tinned fish, they actually provided water and spring water. And it was a huge section of the store. And I have a video put on, you can see us panning it. I'm like, look at this. It was like so beautiful. But they got the other kind as well. But they actually offered this. And so that, so I was kind of, anyone we came in contact with, get the spring water, get the water one, so get the other. Coconut oil, again, rarely used. They do not use it. And he talked about this. I did a video with him talking about their skin and hair care. And he said that would be the only thing they would probably use it on, is their skin and hair.
So, Suze, what was a day of eating for these people?
About the same thing. He said half of his diet, there's a video I have him talking about what his diet is. He talks about 50% is probably fish, and they go right down and get it. They're right there on the ocean. They go down and get the fish. And the other half would be probably taro or cassava and bananas.
So just as a note, though, that fish is going to be warm water fish. Yes. So it's not going to be high in PUFAs, polyunsaturated fatty acids, and omega-3s. It's going to be more lean fish or saturated.
Yes, very much so. And of course, they're going to coconut milk that they would be drinking and so forth. Yeah.
But lots of starches again with the taro?
Taro and cassava. Yeah.
Suze, what was the difference in their grocery stores? Why did they have access to the spring water and any other places didn't?
I found so fascinating because I think that they're just so, and there was the people were so beautiful, just so healthy. We did not see the diabetic looking, the obesity. We didn't see the overweight. We all looked very much like this. And I think it really is the mindset of that region. And they talk about, and they're even the cattle. They raise cattle here on this island, and a lot of the meat on the other islands is flown in from this island to the other island. So a lot of the meat that I was ingesting was coming from Vanatu, and they raise them ancestrally. They raise them beautifully.
Do they eat a lot of meat here?
They do, but I think they're more this tribe. They prefer the fish.
Okay,
they said they'll do some chicken. They will do some chicken. They do raise their chickens as well, but I think they're more fish based. I think they prefer fish.
Yeah.
So that was really fascinating. But again, the difference, they're getting the nutrients that they need, so they're not so frail as they're aging. They're aging beautifully.
Where are they getting like iron from?
Like not much.
Yeah, I mean, and also the fat soluble vitamins here wouldn't be that abundant in the fish.
Well, I think that they're eating the skin, they're eating the chicken, probably some of the eggs, but I'm sure that they do some beef. I'm sure that they do because they're known for their beef. They're known for the beef. But he said it's not a big thing on their list. It's more the fish and the chicken.
Well, the fish are going to have really balanced amino acids, like a ton of glycine, taurine, really balanced amino acid profile.
The fish between this tribe and the Dani tribe, the fish seem to have made all the difference.
Big difference. And the chicken. I think it's huge. And again, it's the animal piece that's there, and you'll see it's going to be the same scenario as we go along.
Guess what, guys? Guess what? Humans are omnivores.
Yes, absolutely, we are. Absolutely, and even the Maasai will talk about how important. Even though it's not a high plant-based diet, they still say that they're detrimental. They need them for their health, and they use the plants. They don't ingest a lot, but boy, they're important to them. They're really important to them. So we were going to go to Tana, which had an amazing tribe. I wanted to go study there. They're the Yakul tribe, but the plane, we had a special plane you had to take there, and it had to be canceled all week long. So I was going to take another plane I was going to hire, but Chris he didn't want to take that because it was kind of a tiny little plane. He's like, I'm not thrilled with that. So we didn't go. So then we went to Fiji. Now Chris was sick at this point, and so I did this as well on my own. And so I had I had to get used to a new guide and who was going to be my translator. And you can see there's a little arrow out there, a little red arrow. There's a person standing out there who's looking for clams and oysters and things on the ocean. And this is on our way to one of the villages that was one of the first villages first settled in Fiji.
So this is where Fiji water comes from?
No, they have springs and things. No, they have springs. Yeah, Fiji water would come here. And that's what they were selling there. Fiji water. That's what I was drinking is the Fiji. But again, it's in plastic bottles. They sell it in plastic bottles. I'm like, why don't they sell this in glass bottles? This is crazy.
Yeah.
It was the same thing in Kilimanjaro in Africa. They had Kilimanjaro spring water, but it was always sold in plastic bottles, and it was a bummer.
Yeah.
But anyway, so this is the first settlement in Fiji, and it was a couple thousand years ago that people first settled. And I was sad to see, because I'd done my research, I was pretty sure what I was going to find. It was exactly what I was going to find. It's become totally inundated with processed food. Most of the people in the village in this area, it's modernized. You can see their buildings are no longer looking like the huts anymore. Most of the people were obese, or overweight. I would show the pictures, but I just don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. They had the shacks. In the shacks, what do they have there? Soybean oil.
Wow.
In Fiji, soybean oil was the big oil there.
So this is literally being made I wonder if this is being made in America or maybe in some European country, because I know that they're not making soybean oil there.
No, but all their food, everything was soybean. And you'll see, I put a video out there, and I said the soybean oil is their choice, and it was just walls of soybean oil. But I said to the women in the village, in this village here, I said, well, do you cook with coconut oil? Oh no. And they thought they were proud. We cook with soybean oil. I'm like, you do? And I'm like, why?
No.
I'm like, oh no. And they go, well, we do a little bit of mustard seed oil. Now, mustard seed is about a 12 to 15 linoleic acid percent, and that still not good. But that I would say probably 20% of their diet would be mustard seed, but most of their diet is soybean. But then I knew that they also had the Hindu temple there. And I've always wanted to talk to a monk. What do monks eat? So I went, and he was a priest. He was the actual priest that's living there. So I said to him, it was beautiful there. And I couldn't believe he took the time, spent so much time with me. And there he is. And his name was Priest Deepaks. And I said, what do you eat? So he said, it gets up early in the morning. And at 4:30 in the morning, he starts his day with a cup of warm water. And he said he just feels it helps to remove the toxins and balances his body. Now, he's beautiful. I mean, he's thin, not a lot of muscle and so forth, but neither are the Maasai. He looks very much like a Maasai, you know?
Yeah.
And so in the morning after his prayer, he'll eat an orange. He's more of a vegetarian, or not really lacto because they would do cow's milk. That's where he's getting. That's why he's staying as healthy as he is, I believe. And then lunchtime, he'll have white rice or dal. Now, dal is like a lentil that's been the coating has been taken off the outside. It's very healing. It's very soothing. When I was vegan, I would eat that to help heal me. When they thought I was dying, I was trying to heal myself with dal. Yogurt is made with cow's milk, so he will have yogurt at that time. And then at 3:00, he'll have a cup of black tea. At dinner time, he'll have roti or flour pudding with curry, beans, okra, or eggplant. So he's only getting that dairy once or twice a day, if that. It's not a lot, but at least I think that's really a key piece to his diet. And then just before he goes to bed, he'll have another cup of warm water. I thought I would be starving.
Yeah, that's such a. He's wow, and he's sleeping 4 to 4.5 hours. 5 hours. 5 hours.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, and he said that the cow dairy. Now this is their wall of oils,
Oh my gosh.
and most of that is soybean.
Oh no.
That's a massive wall.
Yeah.
That's so sad.
And that was just there. They had it all over the whole store. There was just little thing, soybean oil. So it was. I thought it's everywhere. It's like this is they think it's so healthy. They believe it's so healthy.
Oh no.
You know, and this is what people think. So in seed oils in Fiji, I found that the most prevalent again was soybean oil, which is 53% LA, canola 21%. However, mustard seed is also, which is a 12 to 15. But the women were bragging, like, "Oh, we use soybean," you know, thinking it's
Oh,
really
no.
impressive. And I was like, "Oh."
So to me, it's like, I guess we're different and we're eating whole foods and not processed foods, but it's like you can really get the amount of fat that you need just from eating a whole food. So like, how on earth are they going through entire bottles
Of soybean oil.
of oil? I guess because they're cooking, maybe they're
They-
different.
Yeah, and
Meals.
you see them. They fry everything in it. They'll fry
they're
things.
frying
It's
it,
just,
though.
they're banana. They do a lot of they're calling it bananas. They're cooking bananas, but I think it's plantains. And they're probably. And I saw that in Africa. The women on the street, they were cooking the plantains or bananas. They call them bananas in oil, and the women were enormous.
Yeah.
And that's in Africa. So here I am. So what happened? Everyone else says, "Oh, you're so lucky. It's just so glamorous to be traveling and doing all this." I said, "Well, it's not." I said, "Because we're putting our life in our hands every time you go there. You don't know with malaria. You don't know if you're allergic to anything you're eating. You don't know what you're going to step on at any time, or what could get wherever you are." Here we didn't live with a tribe. That wasn't something that Chris was into. So we're living in, and I'm so budget minded, some pretty bad places that had a lot of rats and things. I want to save money. So Chris first injured his knee, and then I was totally eaten. We don't know what I was eaten by, but I was not. Whatever the insects were was just. It was worse than poison ivy, but it was definitely the people in the area kept saying they thought it was mosquito bites. I've never, the pain, the burning, the itching was unbelievable. But I also thought, was it because it was mostly where I jumped into where the water was when I was working in the salt spring. So I didn't know if I was allergic to something in that. Was there something? But they all said they thought it was insect bites. So I'm not sure. Then Chris came down with a severe lung infection. And then I lost my hearing in my left ear because at one point we had done in 32 hours, we did 5 different flights up and down, up and down.
Oh my
The
gosh.
cabin pressure had just literally destroyed my ear, but it's slowly coming back. It is coming back. So I'm
Wow.
hoping eventually I'll get it. It may not be perfect, but I'm good.
Wow.
And of course I had ongoing diarrhea. I left at 112 pounds. I'm 5'8". I left at 112 pounds. I came back at 105.
Oh, Suze.
Oh my
Wow.
So
Wow. Has anybody identified what his lung infection came from?
well, we were on the plane and there was a man sitting next to him coughing like crazy. And I said,
No.
I hope that's not COVID. And then he's like, oh my gosh. And so within a day, he was sick, but I didn't get anything. Chris is a little more susceptible to getting things when we travel. So yeah, so I think it just was more like
Suze,
a
it
bronchitis.
just passes right through you. That's your thing. So
It's
Sue's
just in one and out the other hole.
But I also, because I collect spring water myself, so I'm always ingesting microbes. I know I'm getting probably E. coli. Who knows what I'm ingesting every day in my diet, and I will eat dirt. I do all these things. I live ancestrally, so I think my immune system is extremely powerful. I just am allergic to a lot of things, and this is how I deal with it. It is what it is, you know.
so
Keep living your
Suze,
life, though.
there have been so many insights. I want to do a second podcast just about your Africa.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I want us to be able to let's reflect on. So again, guys, here's the U.S. and
Was this the
This
last
was-
Pacific Island?
yes.
All the Pacific Islands. Yeah.
So she did all the Pacific Islands. And so let's reflect on the Pacific, what the insights from the Pacific Islands. And then next time, let's do the full Africa expedition and then we'll compare and contrast. But
Absolutely.
I think some things that I have seen from your presentation is the more whole food based of a diet. And it's not really a lot of raw food. It's like well cooked. So they didn't eat a lot of raw starches. They
No.
well cooked starches.
Very much so.
A lot of whole foods. The tribes were healthy and the omnivores, like eating a lot of starches, carbs, and then some animal products. And then as they became more and more westernized, started getting more and more processed foods, more linoleic acid, more seed oils. That's when their metabolism started to decline. You started to see more obesity, more health challenges. And so that's kind of what I've seen from the images.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's Sarah, don't you agree? Don't you see the same thing, honey?
I see what you were saying about the lifestyle too. Is like it's once you start switching to these more processed convenience foods, they're not walking as much. They're not
No.
building ovens. They're not
Building up.
They don't have
They're,
to
they're not
anymore.
outside. They're not really outside anymore. They're and those who are getting their cell phones and their TVs, they're becoming westernized. They're just being sedentary. And we've got to focus on the pivotal, and you'll see this in Africa. The wisdom in Africa was just unbelievable. And they talk about that's one of the key factors to longevity is walking. And they said walking. You'll see with me, they were so fascinated because I like body build, so I've got a lot of muscle. And what is this? What is all this? And they were touching my arms, and the men were all, what is all this? You know, what do you do? And the women, what do you do to get like that? You know, and because their health is based on a lot of walking, but yet the women, there's so much I got to tell you. I don't want to ruin it. I don't want to ruin it because wait till you see what the women do in Africa. I couldn't even, although I had something bad happen to me in Africa, so that kind of put me in a. But I think I told. Yes, I told you. I don't know if I told you, but I'll tell you later. So we'll save that as a cliffhanger. Something bad happened to me, which really put me at a disadvantage to do too much lifting. So,
Well, another trend
I have a
is
question too about the Pacific.
yeah.
You're talking about obesity. Were you seeing childhood obesity too? Like the
we saw
children?
interesting with the Samoa, and I pointed this out to Chris. I found that for girls, they didn't start gaining the weight until around puberty. Around 14, 15 years old, that's when I started noticing the girls were becoming overweight. Because the rest of them, they look beautiful. The children look beautiful. The young teens. And the boys were beautiful and healthy up until about their early 20s. And once they hit that, it was shocking. Yeah.
And it's got to be some amount of signaling and like hormonal.
That's what I'm thinking. I
issues
think
coming
once
from
the girls hit their period and their hormones were kind of now, I think it gets you out of whack. I believe when we're eating such processed foods, and you'll see that. And I asked the tribes about when they get their periods, what do they feel? Do they have cramping? Do they have all the things? None. There's no mood swings. There's no cramps. There's no irregularity. It's consistency. There's not these big, huge flow. I mean, it was so consistent. Same when they had their babies. Delivery there's not a problem.
Yeah.
It was so ancestral. It was just so, God doesn't make mistakes. Why would he want us to suffer when we have our periods? Why?
Was that
You
the
know?
same experience as the women that were more in the cities eating the processed foods too?
They become like everybody else.
Oh, okay. So this was more of the ancestral tribes.
Oh, only the ancestral
Okay.
tribes, they're the ones who just they didn't know what I was talking about. I said, do you feel mood swings? Or like, so we had to explain things. A lot of things they didn't understand. They did not understand because they haven't had it.
So something that I would be really curious about is like total calorie intake. So let's just assume that we're talking about the healthy tribe that you saw, the guy brushing his teeth with the coconut.
Heavy?
So were they able, I would love next time we go, like how many calories were they eating a day? Because I think that that's a really important part of health and something that we talk about on the channel here. If someone's eating low calorie, like that's going to lead to health challenges. So like how many sweet potatoes are we talking a day? Like
This I was shocked with. I said to them, you must be eating the Dani tribe, you must be eating an awful lot of sweet potatoes. They were only saying maybe 2. I'm like, 2? I would be starving.
Yeah.
But then they would have their cabbage. They would have some other vegetables. They might have some fruit. But it wasn't a lot of, I thought, how are they surviving on this?
Yeah.
So maybe that plays a role too. They
I think nutrient deficiencies. I think they're starving. I think that they're but yet they're not, the older people were real thin, but the people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s were not.
Yeah.
So I was shocked with that. Yavi, the one who eats the fish, that the tribe in Vanatu, he said that they eat 3 meals a day, and he said, and usually it would be like the taro. Taro is big there. Taro in the morning, and then in fish, it was fish at like every meal. Taro and fish, and at night taro and bananas. No, fish and bananas. So it was always like, but taro was always or cassava, and then fish was a piece or chicken, but mostly fish. But at every meal.
So very balanced, but also lots of starch, good starches.
Yeah.
That sounds like a nice routine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Suze. Let's leave everyone hanging for the insights gained from Africa, your indigenous tribes that you visited in Africa. And we're excited to go along with your next expedition.
And that's the thing, guys, is also I'm trying to get a new foundation started, which will help us to raise money because my life savings is kind of dwindling away. And so I just think it would be great if we could know if we can, instead of having big companies give us money, if it could be by the people.
Yeah.
And if we could help to raise money so that we can go back and live with these tribes that we've already studied, but do even further blood. Because I was doing blood glucose on them. So I was doing the blood glucose levels. And you'll see those in the Africa thing. I'll show you what their blood glucose is. It's fascinating. And so I just would love to go and do even more blood work with a true lab that would be right there with us. And so I'm going to hopefully raise some money to go and do that, and to also help the tribes because they're dying. In Africa, they're dying because the government is taking all their land. And wait till you hear that story. And the Hadzabe are down to 800 people.
Oh my gosh.
And they will become extinct.
Oh my gosh.
And that story was heart-wrenching. Just heart-wrenching what I found. Heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
And not only that, but also the westernized infiltration as well. Yeah.
That's a little bit, but it's mostly that they don't have any, the wild animals are gone because they're sharing their land with other tribes now. They're pastoralists. And so all those pastoralists, their cattle are coming on with their bells going and stuff, and it's scaring away the animals. And so they have nothing to hunt hardly. And now it's a whole story. Wait till you see what they're doing. It's heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
And no one's talking about this. And
I can't wait to hear this.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Suze.
You guys, thank you. I just love you guys so much. And my sheep milk is going to be here on Wednesday.
Yes. And this is just fantastic. If you guys want to watch these videos, Suze will put all your links in the description so people can go to your YouTube, your Instagram, and anything else you want to share. And next time, let's think about how we can put together some sort of initiative towards what you're talking about in terms of getting some sort of funding set up for this.
Yeah, because we guys were really hoping that the three of us will be going in August, and we're already planning it. The tribes are already getting ready for us.
I'm literally going to be like a fish out of water. Like
just prepare you guys. I mean, we're roughing it. There's no water. There's no shower. There's no toilet. And it's. You'll see. I'll show you. I'll walk you through it on the slides when we see it.
Okay. All right.
Wild hyenas.
All right. That's a wrap. Thanks, guys.
Pleasure.
Love you guys. Take care, darlings.